The celestial Colosseum of Drachn 7th had hosted many things in its storied history: duels of honor, trials of dominance, once even a diplomatic misunderstanding that ended in 12 resignations, 3 treaties, and 1 very confused goat. But never, in its 500-year existence, had the Colosseum seen anything quite like this. Because today was the semi-centennial interstellar combat tournament, a gladiatorial spectacle held once every 50 years where every species with a flag, anthem, or oversized ego sent their best to prove that they were, biologically and spiritually, better than everyone else. There were banners in every shade, fanfare from 27 instruments incompatible with human ears, and an announcer whose voice translated into every language except sarcasm, which was unfortunate because sarcasm was exactly what this crowd needed. They were bored of watching apex species snarl and flex and then fall over like sacks of meat. Bored of seeing elite warriors trained for centuries get outmaneuvered by 10-second tactics. Bored of so-called champions who treated the battlefield like a dance floor, twirling, posturing, growling, until someone finally gave up. The Ursen delegate, High Warrior Borvac of the Tusked Wastes, was about to fix that, allegedly. Borvac stood 12 feet tall, built like a freight barge with fur. His species hailed from a Class 6 death world, where survival involved either crushing your enemies or being part of a stampede. He was the final contestant of the tournament bracket, top seed, fan favorite, and previously voted most likely to snap a spine by accident by 3 neutral analysts and 1 unlucky chiropractor. He stepped into the center of the arena, roaring in a guttural tone that required 3 translators and a vibration buffer. The crowd howled in return, and then the final challenger walked out. Correction, strode out. A human girl, mid-20s, combat boots, sleeveless arena uniform, black gloves. She wasn't dramatic, she wasn't armored, she didn't raise her arms or salute the crowd. She just walked forward, 1 step at a time, like someone showing up late to a conversation she wasn't sure she wanted to be part of. Her name, for those paying attention to the brackets, was Calla Vance, and she had no titles, no planet-wide sponsorships, no fan club selling collectible holopins, just a name, a quiet posture, and a data record marked Earth. The announcer tried to inject drama into the moment. And now, the final challenger, human species, Earth designation, combatant Calla V. He trailed off. Because Calla didn't wave, she didn't look up. She stepped into the ring, cracked her neck once, and waited. Borvac growled, a low, thundering rumble that made small children clutch their translation headsets tighter. "She is small," he said through his translator. "She has no claws, no tusks, no fury." He raised 1 massive paw and flexed. "I will end this in a single blow." The crowd loved it, roared approval. Finally, some proper violence. Calla looked up, just once, not at Borvac, at the edge of the arena, at the empty seat halfway up the Colosseum wall. She exhaled softly, then turned back. "Ready," she said. The bell sounded. Borvac charged, like a wall of muscle wrapped in hate. His first move was a downward strike, classic Ursen technique. Slam from above, force your opponent to dodge left, then swing with the tusk. He followed it perfectly, except she didn't dodge left. She leaned right, by an inch. Borvac's paw struck air. His tusk caught wind, and Calla moved, just once, 1 pivot, 1 step in. She planted her left foot, rotated her hip, and drove her palm, open and clean, into the underside of Borvac's exposed jaw. The impact was soft, barely audible, but Borvac's eyes went wide, and then he fell, like a collapsing sculpture. 12 feet of apex warrior, unconscious before he hit the floor. The silence in the Colosseum could have been sliced with a spoon. Even the announcer forgot to breathe. Calla stood over Borvac, exhaled once, and turned her back to him. She walked to the edge of the arena, didn't raise her arms, didn't speak. She just sat, waiting. Up in the booth, tournament strategist Mal Torin, a crystalline life form with 30 years of combat observation, stared at the display feed. "Replay that," he croaked. The AI did. Slow motion, Borvac's strike, her pivot, her palm, the contact point. His neck bent backward at an angle medically inadvisable for any species. "No kinetic enhancement," said the technician. "No biomechanical implants, No augmentation at all. Then how? She just knew where to hit. The analysts stared. Update the database, someone whispered. We need to reclassify humans. Back in the stands, a young alien cadet tugged on his father's arm. Dad, he said nervously, you told me humans were harmless. The father, a dignitary from a species known for long-term memory, didn't answer. He was too busy Googling Earth's pressure point anatomy. In the 27 seconds following Borvac's collapse, not a single sentient in the celestial Colosseum breathed. Literally. One of the insectoid ambassadors actually passed out. It wasn't the loss that stunned the crowd, it was the impossibility of it. Borvac wasn't just strong, he was engineered by evolution to be the measure of physical dominance. Trained for 20 years, won 12 system-level tournaments, held a title in every combat metric except humility, and a human girl had put him down with a slap. That's how most of the spectators described it anyway. A slap. Technically, it was a precision palm strike to a minor nerve cluster under the jaw that disrupted Borvac's inner ear balance and shut down his motor coordination. But yes, a slap. The analysts scrambled. Slow-motion replays, biometric scans, combat simulations. One even tried to recreate the move with a dummy and dislocated his own shoulder in the process. The data didn't help. She shouldn't have been able to do it. But she did. And Calla Vance. She wasn't explaining anything. She sat at the arena's edge, elbows on her knees, watching the cleanup team remove Borvac like a collapsed carnival tent. In the VIP tier, High Strategist Lumek of the Vaeldari Military Council turned to his assistant, his fronds twitching. Bring her to the war chamber. She's just a human, the assistant said. She just undid a tank with bones and timing. Bring her. 3 hours later, Calla sat in a circular room beneath the Colosseum, surrounded by a dozen species that had either conquered or colonized more planets than she had teeth. At least 5 of them were trying not to look nervous. A red light blinked over her head. Recording. Translation active. State your designation, said the council chair, a serpentine ambassador from the Osirian spire. Calla Vance, she said calmly. Earth, human, non-affiliated. The term non-affiliated echoed in the chamber. You're not part of your planet's military. Nope. You've never served in a war. Nope. You executed a perfect anti-kinetic redirection maneuver designed to counter apex predator physics. Who trained you? Calla scratched her nose. My mom. The chamber paused. Clarify, demanded the Osirian. Calla looked up. My mom, she repeated. 3rd-degree black belt, gym in New Jersey. Grew up with her throwing me across padded mats before I learned algebra. The translator stuttered slightly, trying to localize New Jersey. You mean, another ambassador interjected, that technique was taught by a civilian matron. She runs a class on Tuesday nights, Calla added. Pizza afterward. A nervous alien cleared his throat. Do all humans fight like you? Calla gave a small shrug. Most don't. But the ones who do, they don't need a crowd. In a private chamber, 5 elite strategists debriefed. She's lying. She has to be enhanced. No, said the eldest one, adjusting his ocular ridge. She's telling the truth. But how? The strategist paused the footage. Calla's eyes, just before she struck. Still, focused. That's not programming, he said quietly. That's instinct. News of Borvac's defeat spread faster than sanctioned broadcasts could contain. Within 12 hours, 17 training academies across the galaxy updated their curriculum to include human physiology. Within 24, 4 interstellar martial guilds issued statements calling for investigations into unregulated Earth combatants. Within 48, 3 apex species filed formal complaints. And Calla? Calla was back in the arena's training facility, alone, barefoot, repeating slow kata movements on the mat while custodial drones cleaned around her. Why didn't you join Earth's delegation? Asked a voice. It was the Osirian ambassador. He'd come alone. Didn't feel like representing anyone but me, Calla said, not pausing her movements. You know what you've started? She nodded. Yeah. You're a symbol now, a threat. She stopped. Good. The ambassador tilted his head. You don't care what they think? I care that they underestimated the quiet girl who walked in last. Back on the broadcast network, A galactic commentator summarized the day's events with the sentence that would eventually become a meme. She didn't roar. She didn't posture. She just moved. And then he was gone. Borvac woke up in a medical pod. He was angry, which, for his species, looked like trying to flex every muscle in his body at once and roaring loud enough to rattle the fluid sensors. The pod sedated him automatically, but when he woke again, less sedated, still bruised, he demanded only one thing: a rematch. The medical staff did not answer, because they were hiding behind a pressure door. Across the Colosseum complex, Calla Vance was being moved, not escorted, not detained, just moved. The War Council couldn't decide if she was a threat, a hero, or a problem wrapped in skin. So they sent her to a secure wing usually reserved for diplomats too drunk to be seen and prisoners too important to die. She didn't ask questions. She didn't even look curious. She just walked. Meanwhile, the arena broadcast ratings reached record highs. Viewers were demanding everything from slow-mo replays to Calla-cam helmet feeds. Merch stores scrambled to print shirts. One unofficial design read, "Just move, let them fall." It sold out in 17 systems. 3 days after the match, Calla got a visit. It wasn't a formal delegation. It was a man in a suit, human, slim, graying at the edges, polished shoes, eyes like bulletproof glass. "Calla," he said as he entered the room. "You're late," she replied without turning. He smiled faintly. "I was waiting to see how deep the crater would be." Calla stretched one leg across the mat. "You mean Borvac?" "I mean the galaxy's collective ego." He dropped a datapad beside her. "What is this?" 100 offers, training contracts, military deals, sponsorships, 2 minor religions. She flipped it open, scanned, tossed it aside. "No thanks. You could name your price." "I already did." He raised a brow. "And what was it?" She looked up. "A fight worth showing up for." On Drachn Prime, the War Council held a private emergency session. "We can't let this go unanswered." She humiliated our champion. Worse, she did it with control, no rage, no glory, just efficiency. One of the members cleared their throat. "Borvac is requesting a rematch, officially." The room froze. A rematch? It was unheard of, unprecedented. It was also irresistible. The announcement dropped across the galactic broadcast net with all the subtlety of an asteroid. Official rematch approved. Ursen Apex Warrior Borvac versus human combatant Calla Vance. The galaxy lost its collective mind. Betting markets exploded. News channels speculated. Prophets declared omens. Calla, she was eating noodles. When the update scrolled across her room display, she blinked twice, then shrugged. "All right," she said to no one. "Round 2. Borvac trained obsessively. He watched the footage until his eyes blurred. He studied human anatomy, practiced in higher gravity, developed new tactics with a multi-species advisory team. But what he never addressed, what none of them could explain, was the part of the video where she looked at him, not with fear, not with rage, with pity. The day of the rematch, the Colosseum was full 3 hours before sunrise. The betting line sat at 70-30 in Borvac's favor, not because people doubted Calla, but because they hoped he'd recover some dignity. When the arena lights dimmed and the gates opened, Borvac entered first. He didn't roar this time. He nodded to the crowd. He was ready. Calla entered second. She didn't wave. She tied her hair back, adjusted her gloves, and stepped to the center. The ref, a floating AI drone with zero personality, buzzed between them. Rematch clause initiated. Standard parameters. Fight until incapacitation or yield. Calla raised her hands. Borvac crouched. The bell sounded. This time, he didn't charge. He circled. He feinted left, right, tried to draw her into a mistake. She didn't bite. He lunged forward with a double-fisted slam. She stepped left, redirected his wrist with one hand, and tapped his foot with hers. He stumbled, off balance. Her elbow came up, angled perfectly. Impact. Borvac flew backward 3 meters and stayed down. The crowd gasped, not because he fell, but because he didn't get up. Calla exhaled, then offered her hand. Borvac groaned and took it. She pulled him up. The arena went still. Then, a cheer. Not for victory, for respect. In the box seats, one ambassador whispered to another, "We feared she would humiliate him again." She didn't, the other replied. She taught him. The day after the rematch, the galaxy felt confused. Not because Borvac lost again, that much had become expected, but because he shook her hand, because the biggest, angriest apex predator in 3 sectors had accepted defeat with dignity. And Kala? She didn't gloat, she didn't boast, she didn't even stay for the press conference. She vanished. Not literally, just into a small hangar somewhere behind the arena complex, where she cleaned her gloves with a towel and made herself tea. Back on Earth, the human media finally caught up to the galactic broadcasts. Within hours, a clip of the takedown hit 1.2 billion views. The Quiet Girl trended globally. A martial arts dojo in Newark had to shut down their website after too many people tried to book classes with a Mrs. Vance. But outside of Earth, something else was happening. A species known only as the Palin, a warrior caste from the Spiral Arm's edge, activated something ancient. Not a war fleet, not a bounty order, a summons. Kala Vance was invited to the Hall of Eternal Combat, a place that hadn't opened its gates in over 600 years, because according to the Palin, what she demonstrated wasn't just physical superiority, it was perfect martial expression, and they wanted to understand it. Kala didn't answer right away. Instead, she sparred, with her own shadow, with a training drone, with silence. She thought about her mum's dojo back home, Tuesday night classes, orange belts doing sloppy side kicks, sweat, laughter, discipline. That was her real training ground. Not this, not glory, just movement and control. The Palin sent an emissary. He arrived in person, which was rare since his kind usually sent blade-shaped poetry instead of ambassadors. He stood outside her temporary room and bowed. Kala answered the door in a hoodie and compression pants. "You're smaller than expected," the Palin said. "You're taller than the average metaphor," she replied. They stared. Then, slowly, the Palin smiled. "I am called Gran Tal, combat historian." Kala stepped aside and gestured him in. Gran Tal produced a tablet etched with star metal. "This is a record of the 44 greatest duels in galactic history." "Is this a flex?" she asked. He chuckled. "Number. It's an invitation. The Council believes your encounter with the Ursen warrior belongs here." Kala raised a brow. "Because I won?" Gran Tal shook his head. "Because you did it without rage, without fear, with precision, and because you offered your hand after." Kala stared at the etchings. Some were violent, some were poetic, some were clumsy. She paused at one from over 1,000 years ago. A single stroke, a still figure. The duel ended before it began. "This one," she said. "This looks like Aikido." Gran Tal blinked. "What is that?" She smiled. "An old Earth thing. Movement over strength, flow over force." He tapped the tablet slowly. "Would you teach us?" That question echoed through the galactic martial community, because while the galaxy had seen strength, speed, brutality, it had never seen a philosophy quite like Earth's quiet violence. They began studying human footage, boxing, judo, Wing Chun, Krav Maga, capoeira, silat, sambo. Soon, Earth's combat sports were worth more than its mineral exports. The phrase, "taught by a human," became a mark of elite training. And Kala, she was already onto her next challenge. Not a fight, not a duel, a request. The Ursen. Yes, those Ursen, Borvac's species, had invited her to lecture at their prime academy. They'd even offered to remove the ceremonial headbutt from introductions to make her more comfortable. She declined the headbutt, accepted the rest. Her first lecture opened with 12 Apex recruits waiting in silence. Borvac was there, in the back, quiet, respectful. Kala stood in front of them with nothing but her stance. No armor, no weapons, just her. She said one thing. "Your power doesn't matter if you don't know where to put it." Then she moved, and no one interrupted her again. By the time Kala Vance returned to Earth, she wasn't just a human anymore. She was an example. The footage of her matches had been analyzed, dissected, and mimicked across 24 systems. Alien martial schools now featured holographic cutouts of her footwork. Translations of her calm words were etched onto the doors of combat temples. One asteroid colony had even named their arena the Vance Circle, which was awkward, considering Kala herself had no idea any of this had happened until her shuttle landed, and waiting for her at the Earth landing bay, a delegation in clean uniforms, black and silver, Earth Defense. The man who stepped forward wore medals on his chest and exhaustion in his eyes. "Lieutenant Vance," he said. Kala raised a brow. "Haven't been a lieutenant in 4 years," he smiled. "Consider this a reinstatement offer." She crossed her arms. "What kind of offer?" The man handed her a data tablet. "Top clearance, classified seals." "The galaxy's watching Earth now," he said, "and we've been doing some catch-up." She flipped through. Names, coordinates, species, combat assessments, proposals for joint operations, and one line that made her stop. "Galactic systems with no counter-strategy to human precision close-quarters combat." She glanced back at him. "You want me to teach soldiers how to break aliens?" "No," he said. "We want you to teach them how not to need to." Back home, in a quiet dojo in New Jersey, Mrs. Vance was teaching 6 new white belts how to fall without crying. The TV in the corner was off, because she didn't need to see her daughter on the news. She already knew. Kala didn't give her answer right away. Instead, she walked through the cities of Earth, rode a train, bought a bad coffee, stood on a hill she hadn't seen since high school, and thought. The galaxy now believed that humans were dangerous, because of her. But she knew the truth. Humans weren't dangerous because they hit hard. They were dangerous because they knew when not to. When she finally stepped into Earth Defense HQ, the generals stood. She didn't salute, didn't bow, just said, "I'll help, but on my terms." One general asked what that meant. Kala gave him the same look she gave Borvac before he dropped. "My way, my timing, my discipline, and no war games." Another tried to protest. Kala stepped forward, and without touching him, made him step back. Her first training group was skeptical. 5 elite soldiers, 1 rogue agent, 2 engineers who just wanted to observe. She stood before them with a broom handle, no speech, no welcome, just, "Hit me." They hesitated. She repeated it. "Hit me." One tried. He didn't land a single blow before he was on the ground. She helped him up. "Lesson 1, she said. "Don't attack first, survive first." The months that followed were quiet, not because there were no threats, but because threats hesitated now. They'd seen the footage, heard the stories, studied the strike that dropped Borvac like a sack of potatoes, and they knew one thing: humans didn't posture, they didn't shout, they just moved. Back on Drachn 7th, the Colosseum was empty. The statues of old champions had been joined by a new one. It was small, simple, a human figure, mid-motion, one hand raised, one step forward, no weapons, no expression, just movement. Beneath it, an inscription in 16 languages. She entered last, she spoke least, she moved once, and the galaxy listened.